Hi everyone, welcome to episode 111 of the ITSM crowd. Today we are all about operating models. So I'm seeing constantly operating model, target operating model. We need to shift to a new operating model. Sometimes the word digital gets thrown in there as well. So I thought it'd be helpful to have an episode where we just dig into this concept. And luckily, I happen to know a real expert who is not too far down the road from me. And we're going to start by getting him to introduce himself. So, Craig, tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, Claire, thanks very much for inviting me today. So I'm an accountant and MBA by background. Many years ago, I spent about 30 years in projects, problem solving and business design, which is my real passion. Latterly working as a business architect, so that helps me, and that's one of the roles which I think naturally tends to get into target operating model. Recently, we've co-founded the business architecture community in the UK. I'd say I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm definitely in the case of the more I learn, I realise the less I know. And the maxim I try and go along with is one from Bruce Lee. Unfortunately, I've never aspired to his martial arts prowess, but the philosophy was absorb what is useful, discard the rest, add what is uniquely your own. So I'd hope that people today take on board this is my offering. I wouldn't quite put myself as an expert, but and I'll come on to that because I don't think there are many experts when it comes to target operating models. I think there's a range of views. So I'm more than happy to get challenged.
Fantastic. Thank you. For those of you that have joined us and are watching live, you can put your questions to Craig using YouTube chat. So pop your questions in there if you've got anything, or even just a comment that you want to make. We do love to hear from you as well. My name's Claire Agutter. I am today's host. So we always tend to start at the beginning with definitions because, particularly in the IT space, we throw a lot of words around and we assume that everybody understands what we mean. So when we talk about, one, an operating model, and two, a target operating model, what exactly should that mean to us?
Very, very good question. So an operating model, the way I've heard it explained, we talk about a BOM and a TOM, which is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
So the BOM is the business operating model, which is how the business operates now. TOM, not surprisingly, is how you want it in the future. So it's very much the as is and the to be. Wikipedia, for once, let me down. So the definition of a TOM on Wikipedia was a description of the desired state of the operating model of an organization, which didn't really say much to me. There's people I know quite well. And another organization said a TOM is a high level representation of the best way for a company to be organized to deliver its strategy. And in this context, me being me, I had to come up with my own one, which is like me, quite simple and direct, which is it's what you need to do to meet your business objectives and how. And I think that's an important thing. As a business architect, we try and take everything back to what's the raison d'etre of the business, what's your strategic intent, strategic direction. And I think a lot of us identify with that. You need to always link it back to the strategy. If you don't do that, I think you're asking for trouble. And that's as simple as I put it.
That's fair.
Could I just say, when we talk about models, that there's George Box said something about all models are wrong, but some models are useful. And I sort of say everything's wrong, but it's a question of degree. So I think we always have to bear that in mind. And again, I'm coming back to this. There is no such thing as a perfect Tom. There's no such thing as a perfect thing, but some are less worse than others. And I think that'll be a recurring theme, I'm afraid.
So when you say it's a representation of structure, my brain and possibly other people's tends to go to organizational structure, teams, lines of reporting, but I'm assuming there's more to it than that.
Funnily enough, yes. So when I thought, right, so I've got a slide, one of my secret squirrel slides here. It says, what is not a TOM? And the first one was organizational model. I've seen that people have carried out what they call TOM work, and all it is So all it is an organizational model. That is not a TOM. It's not a tech roadmap. It's not high-level processes. It's not an outsourcing plan, and it's not a new strategic plan. It is all those and more. So if you ask me what we end up with, there's most consultancies and the businesses I've worked in, you either have a 9, 10, 12, 14 box model. And within those models, in fact, I should show you so there is an example of a 12 box model, and you can tailor this. For those who are familiar with the concept of POPIT, people, organization, process, information, technology, that's built into this. And we normally keep this on a wall somewhere. And as we go through, we start having question marks and then answers. So for the organization, you'd expect, as you'd said, Claire, to have an organization tree. And that might be quite radical from where you are at the moment.
Yeah.
The people, you'll start saying, well, what competency of people? Do we need more? Do we need to outsource to a low-cost environment? Or do we need to have a lot more experienced people to address our model? Within this, you'll have the outsource, in-source thing. You'll be thinking about your capabilities. What are the products that we need? So if you like, that is something like the end target. But within all those, you will have a series of models and a series of strategies and objectives. And so locations. So your location might be cyber. It might not be a physical location, so that might not count. So you might have something else in that box. On one of them, so I've got government there. Now it depends. We were actually an arm's length body for the civil service at a previous organisation, so the government one was very important. For other people, it's not relevant, so you might put something else in that box. But it's what are the key elements for success for you. So that's what the final TOM would look like at a high level. So, and I think I may have gone slightly off the topic there, but never mind. So what was the question again?
It was basically, what is a TOM? And if it's not an organisation structure, what's involved? And this, I mean, this to me, looking at this, it's simple. It makes sense. I can see this supporting a good conversation. This is a million miles away from some of the PowerPoint decks that I've seen from some of the consultants I've worked with. Right.
So I'm just trying to think how to segue into. No, I'll just go straight into it. So there are a few challenges, and I'm trying to find my crib notes here as to if we go to what are the challenges about arriving at a TOM that works for us, and this will probably end any career hopes I've got of getting a job with the Big Four. But the first one I've got on here is external consultancies. Beat the Big Four, beat mid-tier. It is potentially a very lucrative area of business. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people out there in the consultancies doing it who don't really understand what a target operating model. If we take it, it's the way to get from strategic intent to an executable model of operation. Some steps get mixed out, and I'll come on to the steps in a bit. So external consultancies, personal opinion, I've not had great experiences with their work in TOM. There are some smaller niche players who are superb, and I'll call those out later. You need to understand the tools and methods. There are a whole host of tools and methods you can throw at this, and some of them are very useful. But it's like any tool method in IT. If you don't use the right tool at the right place for the right reason, you're just spinning your wheels. I think something that gets left out a lot is the future state design. So again, classic case is, and a lot of the when TOMs go bad, consultant says, this is where you are now, and this is the future state. And you say, well, how did you get from there to there? Oh, well, previous clients have done this, and Gartner says this. That's not how it works. You have to start with here. You have to work out what your market's doing, and you have to do all this innovative thinking to get there. Because if you do the same as everybody else, why would people buy from you? Why would people take your services? You've got no competitive edge. So that's when you bring in things like design thinking and systems thinking to get creative and work out that approach. I think that's. I'll come back to some of the points later. What might be useful? I take you through what I think are the key components for actually creating a TOM.
Yep.
And right, I think that slide there. If I just
Yep.
try and talk through this slide. Start with the start. What's the strategic direction? What business are we in? So most people aren't like Nokia. I think Nokia started off as chopping down timber, and then they made the logical step to making mobile phones. I have no idea how they made that leap. Most people who try to do that fail.
Yeah.
Okay, but Nokia was expert, and they obviously did terminate themselves later, but that's for a whole different set of reasons. So what business are we in? Once we've sort of bounded what business we're in, two very important things. Look at your internal business and assess it. What are we good at? What are we bad at? Where are our key advantages and disadvantages? So you can use a tool like Poldat or CC Poldat. They keep on adding more lessons. So that's like organization, legal. Well, it comes back to POPIT again.
Yeah.
Process, information, technology. So what are our internal capabilities? And then you do the external capabilities, which are personal, political, economic, social. I won't go through the rest because I'll get it wrong. So you look at both those, and then the hard thing that a lot of people don't do is take it to the future. You have to start doing that knowledge thing about where are we likely to be in the next 5 years? And that's obviously where it gets a bit more fuzzy, but that's where you need to bring in experts to help you. It's the old axiom, if you aim for the moon, you don't aim for where the moon is now. You have to far ahead of it. So you have to skate towards that future state with your analysis. As part of that, you also do the market needs. Now, there's some wonderful tools out there. My favorite is the value proposition canvas. And that's basically going through and working out who are your target stakeholders, markets, what are their needs, and then trying to work out what are our products or capabilities that meet those needs. It sounds very simple. You'd be amazed how many people that don't work that way. They start with the theory that if we build it, they will come.
Yes.
Recipe for going bankrupt. So again, some creative thought is, and it's not straight line thinking, it's creative thought to develop products that especially for the future, the market will need. So the value proposition canvas then is a derivation of the business model canvas, which many of your listeners may know about. So Strategize are very good at doing work with that. So you build your business model. Business model canvas is the best way I know of representing the business model canvas. It's not the only one. Other models are available. So you understand how your business works, how it interconnects internally. You say, right, these are the capabilities, these are the partners I need to work with, and this is where we deliver value to this particular set of customers. You then dig into your capabilities and saying, right, we're either really good here, really bad there. So from a business architect, this is where I sell the business architecture function. This is where we come into our own and we say, we heat map it. Which are the capabilities you need to develop and how? So once you've got all this big tub, it's not a great word, this big tub of information, you've got to start doing the creative business design. How do we get from where we are now to the future? How are all these things going to work? How are supply chains going to work? How's our IT and data strategies going to help and support this? Which parts are important? Which parts will we outsource, etc., etc.? So then you build this model and what the future likes and how all the value streams through your business. Then comes the painful part. You say, right, what is the business impact? How, if we've got this new model, what's it actually going to do to our business? Now, this POPIT is one model. Topic is another model. I've sort of adapted it. Yeah, this is a Craig Jeffries special. So it's technology, organization and people, process, information, and C is commercial. So this is where we step out of the component parts. We think commercially, pounds, shillings, and pence. What's it going to cost us? Where's the money going to come from?
Yeah,
because we live in the real world and we still need to make a profit, or if you're a non-profit organization, we still need to be able to fund ourselves. So we have to think about that. So once you've got this wonderful deck together, and it doesn't have to be the usual 300-page PowerPoint. In fact, it should be quite small and pithy. What you the context diagrams you see, you then move to the roadmap. Two aspects of the roadmap. You need to define your end state.
Yep.
But normally, a lot of the if it's a big change, you won't get there in one step. So you have transition states, a number of defined steps, and each step you can articulate how much closer we are to the goal, how much better the business is. And the very difficult one that you layer on that is the metrics. So how do we know, how can we prove that we're getting there? What type of return should we be looking for? And then you get into the plan, do, check, act, because you've now got something, sorry, I'll probably miss something out. You can measure now. So if you're not hitting that metric, was the metric wrong, or are we doing something wrong? So that in a nutshell is what you're trying to do. And there's that letter say in blue to the right, this isn't a linear process. You'll go so far forwards, you'll think, yes, this is what we're going to do. This is the answer. And then you have the moment where you think, can't afford it. We haven't got the right people, or something's beat us to it. Because the one thing a lot of people don't take into account when they do this very much internal blinker view of what the target operating model is, the future changes, people will react to it. So Apple brings out an iPhone in itself, brilliant. Samsung will bring out something.
Yes.
And you have to be cognizant of what your competitors will do and how they'll react. Or they will just make a takeover bid for your design department and buy them out, which happens in, say, the financials in the city, where people just buy out your most successful team. So how do you deal with that?
And how, what sort of time window is it different for every organization? Is there a sort of average amount of time that it's useful to plan in this way for?
Speaking as a true consultant, it depends. So I used a cut down method of this to do something for I did this for an internal team, and I think we managed to do it within about 2 months. But that was very much cut down, bare bones. It was an agile with a small a approach. Yeah. So we did it very quickly and iterate, and it was a proof of concept to an extent, but it showed us where the gaps were. If you were doing this for a large business, 6 months, it depends who you've got to throw at it. And part of that is, I was going to come back to a real world challenge. You need access to the people who can actually run this program. It is quite intellectually challenging at times. You need access to the domain SMEs who understand the business and who understands the market you're playing in. And those people who can just go out and find that information. And then it's that special source. I call them these people who can look at it, look at a massive information and start identifying the patterns and coming up with the bright ideas. And they're very hard to define. And I don't think you say they come from any particular profession, but the type of people you know them when they see them, and they are worth their weight in gold. Like a Messi or something like that. You can take the bare components, but then you see them on the field and they do something exceptional. So I've just been visited by my dog who's just been out for a walk. So the other challenges are you need to be pragmatic and make it implementable. Again, I'm sure we'd never level this at any of the consultancies, but sometimes it can end up being theoretical. It looks very good on paper, but you start talking to the operational people and say, yeah, it looks cute. How the thump do we actually do that? And then there's the converse of that, is which I think is more to the when you're thinking about how you're going to make these strategic things come to life, is when you're sometimes too simplistic. The world is a messy place, and you've got to understand some of that complexity. Sometimes the devil is in the detail, and it's knowing when or when to look at that. Oh, and the final point that always baits me is holistic. Everything these days is in the marketplace so interconnected, and also within businesses. If I work with a number of finance teams because I'm an accountant by chain. If we just look at finance in itself, that ignores the fact that all the problems you get in finance tend to come from front of house systems and
Mm-hmm.
operations. They're the ones who do something you think, why would you do that? It might have made your job very easy. You might have changed that field. Thank you very much. But it doesn't fit nicely in my SaaS back of house system. And the computer says no, you get more, you have to get manual workarounds. And it's that type of thing. It's understanding that end-to-end process to make sure that you're able to cope with the market and cope with your internal systems.
And we've actually got a question here, which I think is pertinent to that point. So Steve, hello Steve, is asking us a question that we talk about business operating models, and we also talk about IT operating models. So to what extent do the two models need to be connected? Do they need to be developed in parallel, or is it kind of a cascading flow? How do these all fit together?
So this is where I get lynched by some of our users. There is only a business operating model. Sorry, it is business. It is business. Business leads everything. Now I can say that I've got time writing business requirements, and we all. The mantra is there is only a business requirement, and then IT requirements meet the business requirement. And I'll put it this way: as wonderful as our IT departments are, and all those capabilities, and all that sexy kit that's flashing around, it's of no use whatsoever if you haven't got a business. And so the IT system has to support the business. And often, this day and age, it's probably one of the most important capabilities for supporting the business operating model. But the business operating model is the big model. And within that, the IT is absolutely fundamental to supporting that. And it has to be driven by the business model. And things like affordability. You can't just go off and buy 5 Craig computers and start massively invest in ChatGPT 5 or whatever the next version is. It's got to be within the scope of the business, affordability, and what you actually need. And I'd say exactly the same to the people operating model, to the process operating model, to your logistics operating model. The business operating model is the umbrella, and everything works together underneath. And absolutely. It's massively interconnected. Sometimes it's quite hard to extricate the two because IT is just another capability, as important as it is. Does that answer the question?
I hope so, but Steve, feel free to chip back in.
Yes.
I'm interested to hear what you've got to say to that. And I think that question's one of the sort of the questions that we discussed before this was, why is Tom such a buzzword at the moment? And I suspect it is linked to this sort of emphasis we have on digital transformation right now. How do we digitally transform? Well, we must need a target operating model in order to get us there. And this is where we have these strong links between IT and the business now, because the technology is such a fundamental part of what we do.
Yeah, if you don't, right. So there's that thing out of Alice in Wonderland says, and I never get this right. If you don't know where you're going, any path will take you there.
Yes.
And the target operating model that's where we're going towards. And there's that phrase about the North Star, and I quite like that. I think it's important that occasionally you're working really heavily on a project, or you've got some technology you're trying to bring in, or you're doing your day job. You need to occasionally eyes up from the computer and say, right, that's my North Star. Is what I'm doing linked to that? If it's not, why isn't it? And then sometimes it's a bit tenuous, the connection, if I'm moving from Windows 8 to Windows 10. Sometimes you think, well, is that connected? Well, of course, it's an enabler to get us there. If I'm developing a new set of products that we don't sell now, and we're actually not to sell in the future, why am I doing that? So I think you always have to have that alignment to the future. It's not helped that the fact that target operating model, it's still in its infancy about understanding what it is. There's some great authors out there. There are some there's some really cute models out there that I've seen done. But I think we're still in an infancy. So if you could just show that slide there. So I've got to say, as a caveat, I'm not endorsing this slide. It's not a recommendation, but there's no, as I said, there's no perfect representation. But this is from a bunch of consultants called From Here On, Aussie based, but they've got a UK outlet. And I use elements of this. I actually argue against elements of this, but I like the fact that it shows you start with what's the business motivational model, which is looking at what your strategies, what's the context of the market environment you're working in, and then through a series of things they don't show all up here, you move to your business model. So this is how we're going to make money type thing, and then you break that out into what's your marketing model, what's your service model, what are your capabilities, and then you break them down into various models, and then as you can see, you move to your roadmap. Now the bit I missed out, bad on me, they've got the governance as well. So that's sort of where the metrics come in. Plus, but speaking to the converted here, without governance, you've got to keep everybody. It's no point having a plan and a target if it falls by the wayside. So you need to have a governance structure in place to make sure we're moving towards that. But also it's that feedback loop. So if something changed dramatically, so AI comes in tomorrow and they develop a use for it that actually fundamentally negates half your value proposition. Well, yeah, you've got to rethink. Going back to something you said earlier, Claire, I know I haven't covered it. You said, how long does it take to do? Well, I'm saying 3-6 months, piece of string of it. How often do you do it?
Yeah,
4 to 5 years. It's a big project because it's quite resource intensive. But through the governance, through the feedback loop, you should have your architectural teams and associated people looking at it and just tweaking it across the way through the governance process. So, and that keeps it alive, because if it's just put on the shelf and never used again, well, why did you do it?
Yeah.
And this is where it should be very different to like a 5-year plan, which very few organisations I know really handle it really well. And it needs to be cascaded down so people understand it, because again, unless you've communicated it, what's the point?
Yeah. And I think we could carry on forever, but we are capped at half an hour. So
yeah.
Steve, we're maybe not going to get to your second comment, but I would suggest that you and Craig hook up on LinkedIn, because I think you would actually get on very well. Craig, some resources, top tips, any kind of last key thoughts to close us out?
Resources. So looking at anything on the business model canvas and the value proposition canvas, I'm looking at the books at the moment. They're on bookshelf. I can't remember who did them, but the well-known topics, there's lots of videos about that. If you go to From Here On, they are one of the better. There's some nice information on their website. What I will do is I'll try and compile some of the websites that I've used previously. I'll just slot those into documents and Claire, work out how that can be circulated or left on your site.
That'd be brilliant. We do a blog for every episode, so we can share those.
I will do that. I will do that. But no, it's been great talking to you, and hopefully it's got people thinking about it a bit more proactively and with hope.
It's got me thinking about it. I'm just disappointed we didn't get to see your dog, that's all.
Yes, but he's left scratch marks on the knee already and mud, so he's obviously happy.
Yeah. Our next episode is on the 13th of April. It is at 2 p.m. BST, which I struggled to schedule because the clocks will change between now and then. But I'm going to be joined by Lisa Schwartz and Donna Knapp, and we're going to revisit the sustainability topic that we looked at in January. So talking a little bit more detail about sustainability practices, what organisations should be thinking of doing and why. So I hope you can join us for that one. Thank you to everybody who's watched us today. Thank you, Steve, for your comments. Thank you so much, Craig, for being with us.
Nice to be pleased to be here.
We will see you all on the next episode of the ITSM Crowd. Bye.
Cheers then. Bye.